Imagine living under scrutiny from the day you were born till the day you died. This was the reality that people living in Sparta faced. The entire lives of Spartan men was dedicated to military service, while women were expected to oversee every other aspect of life. So, what kind of a life did a typical Spartan live? Make sure you stick around until the end of this video to find out. Welcome to Untold History Guy, where you can find fun, fascinating, and sometimes shocking chronicles of history. Join us as we journey back and uncover the untold truths of the past. Growing up in Sparta. In every country, there's always a group that stands out. This was Sparta in Greece, since the people from this city-state had a unique lifestyle. The first thing that may cross your mind when you think about Greece may be a democracy, but the Spartans did not practice this. You may assume that every child has a right to life, but the Spartans didn't share the same sentiments. Every child born in this city-state was inspected by a certain council to determine whether they were fit enough to live. If, during the inspection, the child showed any signs of weakness or had any defects that could affect their ability to be a soldier, they were killed. This was because all aspects of the life of Spartans revolved around fighting for the state. One cannot overlook the cruelty of the Spartans, since it is believed that children considered unfit were abandoned in the hills or wilderness to die from exposure. Growing up as a Spartan came with many challenges, even after being accepted by the council, since they were trained to fear nothing. Crying was unacceptable, and wearing shoes was unheard of. The Spartans believed that walking on bare feet would harden the children. They were also taught not to fear the darkness or solitude. What is more surprising is that the Spartans bathed the children in taps of wine to evaluate their strength. They believed that weak ones would convulse and die. Training at the Agoge. If you've been blessed to have a mother, you probably consider her your rock. Unfortunately, the Spartans didn't value that relationship so much. The children in this city belonged more to the state than to their parents, since they were raised to become soldiers. Since mothers are tender and have a softening influence on their children, Spartan boys were taken from their mothers as soon as they turned 7 and enrolled in the Agoge. This was a state-sponsored program designed to instill loyalty to the state and physical prowess. The Spartans put the 7-year-olds in communal barracks and trained them to be soldiers. These children did not only suffer the loss of being separated from their mothers, but also underwent harsh physical training. The Spartans believed that depriving them of some of their needs, like food, would harden them. Spartans are some of the weirdest people, since they sometimes underfed the boys to encourage them to steal food. And if one was caught stealing, they would be punished, not for stealing, but for not being smart enough to get away with it. They also underfed them so they could get used to hunger pains, so that later in life when they went to battle, it wouldn't be a problem. The Spartan boys had to endure pain, since sometimes they would be beaten by older boys to make them tough. Sometimes, the seniors created tensions in the barracks to find out who was the strongest. Since the Spartans viewed weak people as a hazard, boys who showed weakness were treated with aggression. They were schooled in survival tactics like hunting and combat. Spartan boys were taught that their sole purpose in life was to serve the state, and obedience and self-discipline were expected. Additionally, gaining weight was not tolerated in Sparta, since anyone who would be overweight was ridiculed. Imagine going to the extent of giving the Spartan boys a single garment to discourage them from gaining excess weight. If a person gained more weight, getting new clothes was not an option. They had to eat less or exercise to maintain the single garment given to them. As soon as they turned 19 or 20, they had to undergo rigorous testing. If a Spartan boy passed the test, they would graduate and join the military. Imagine going through such harsh treatment for years only to fail the rigorous test. This was what some Spartan boys underwent. Those who failed the test were not given the right to become citizens, but were considered the middle class and were called the periaiki. Serving in the military. You might assume that being considered a full citizen and joining the military meant the beginning of a good life, but this was not the case. The Spartan men who joined the military continued receiving training that focused on obedience and strict discipline. All men in Sparta were expected to stay in the army until the age of 60 and not focus on any other occupation. You can tell that this was not optional, since even when a man chose to marry, they were forcefully removed from their family. They were expected to live with their military friends until they turned 30. You're probably wondering how Spartan men that married early survived. considering they were forced to live in the barracks. Well, they had to sneak out at night to see their families. If they were caught sneaking, they would be punished for being sloppy enough to get caught. It was only after a Spartan man turned 30 that he was allowed to live with his family. They were offered a piece of land where they could start their families. Despite their age, Spartan men were always expected to remain physically fit. So, how did the Spartans prepare for battle? If you've watched movies based on historical battles, you may have a clue as to how the Spartans went to war. They wore bronze helmets, ankle guards, and breastplates, and carried a sword, a long spear, and a round shield. Their red cloaks and long hair made them stand out on the battlefield. Every Spartan that served in the military was expected to always maintain a sharp mind. Since alcohol, of course, can mess that up, they were only allowed to drink wine in moderation. Social classes. Social classes have existed for centuries, and they were common in Sparta. This is one of the city-states that were famous for their social inequality since it divided its people into 3 categories. You would either be a Spartan, Pyrrhici, or Helot. A Spartan represented people who served in the army and were considered full citizens. This group of people had legal and political rights. Below them was the Pyrrhici, whose main role was to produce armor and weapons for the Spartan warriors. They served as blacksmiths and traders in the city-state. The lowest class in Sparta was the Helots. This group consisted of farmers and servants responsible for handling menial tasks. The Helots were also slaves that were captured in battles and hated by the rest of the people in the other classes. What about the women? Unlike the Spartan men that were active in the military, the women were more involved in family matters and business. You might assume that based on how the Spartan men were treated, women were viewed as inferior. On the contrary, the Spartan women enjoyed more freedom and status than any other Greek woman. In fact, Spartan women were independent-minded and engaged in formal education. Like in any other society, sexual appeal was important for the Spartans. That's why unmarried women in Sparta participated in athletic competitions like wrestling and javelin naked to attract mates. They also engaged in singing and dancing competitions. The Spartans believed that engaging their women in such activities would also make them strong mothers. According to the Spartans, strong mothers produce strong children. That's why their women were given the same food portions as the men. Like the Spartan men, women also underwent citizenship tests between the ages of 18 and 20. It was only after passing such tests that a Spartan woman would be assigned a husband. It may come as a surprise to you that Spartan women were even given the liberty to manage and own property. Due to the existence of helots, who were essentially slaves in Sparta, the women were not confined to homes and they were not in charge of domestic chores. Not many women today can agree with the ways of the Spartans, since they expected their women to shave their heads and keep their hair short after marriage. Though the Spartan women were not allowed to directly engage in politics, their participation in business affairs enabled them to influence how the society functioned. Marriage. By this point, you're aware that Spartans got married. In fact, society encouraged people to get married to create the next generations so that there was never a shortage of boys to train for war. Unlike in modern society, where you can choose to stay single without being judged, the Spartans were not as accommodating, and staying single was shamed. The Spartans in marriages were encouraged to give birth, and some were even rewarded for having many children. Since the women were never allowed to be soldiers, giving birth to boys was more valued than giving birth to girls. Another surprising fact about their weddings is that the Spartan women had to dress in male clothes on the night of their wedding. So, what do you think? Would you be able to live the life of a Spartan? Feel free to share with us in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.